Condition and Cleanliness of Food Contact Surfaces, presented by David L.A. Rosson, 123foodhandler.com. This training presentation was developed specifically to assist seafood and juice processors meet the regulatory requirements of, in the case of juice processors, 21 CFR 120. In the case of those that are processing fish or fishery products, 21 CFR 123. So this class is about food contact surfaces, the condition and the cleanliness of food contact surfaces. So what is a food contact surface anyway? Well, it's defined as surfaces that contact human food, and those surfaces from which drainage or other transfer onto the food or onto surfaces that contact the food ordinarily occurs during the normal course of operations. And some common food contact surfaces include utensils, knives, tables, cutting boards, conveyor belts, ice makers, ice storage bins, gloves, aprons, etc. This definition was extracted from the regulation 21 CFR 117.3 in the definition section. So if I'm in the juice or the fish business and I process products, as a processor, I am required to monitor the conditions and practices during processing with sufficient frequency to ensure, at a minimum, conformance with those conditions and practices specified in Part 110 of this chapter and in Subpart B of 117 of this chapter. What chapter? Title 21. And these conditions, these practices have to be appropriate to the plant, to the food being processed. Each processor shall, that means mandatory, correct in a timely manner those conditions and practices that are not met. So again, another requirement under this is a specific requirement under 123, Title 21, 123 for fish and fishery products, and Title 21, 120 for juice products. Now here's what we're supposed to be monitoring. The previous slide said, hey, you got to monitor the conditions of practice. Well, what do you have to monitor? We have to monitor these 8 areas. You have to monitor these 8 areas of sanitation. And you have to make sure these 8 areas also comply with the Good Manufacturing Practice Regulation, just previously mentioned, Subpart B of Title 21, 117. So, this class specifically is going to take a look at the condition and cleanliness of food contact surfaces, which again includes utensils, gloves, outer garments, etc. But you also have to be mindful of the other 7. Take a look at my other training sessions to look at those. So again, area number 2, condition and cleanliness of food contact surfaces, including utensils, gloves, and outer garments. This area must comply with 21 CFR 117 Subpart B, which replaced 21 CFR 110. So what does 117 say about food contact surfaces? Well, there are quite a few references. I've laid out some here for you in the presentation. Be sure to review the document for yourself to make sure I've covered everything. What document? 21 CFR 117. Remember, we have to make sure our condition and cleanliness of food contact surfaces are monitored and managed, and they have to comply with 117. Specifically, 117.35 D2 states that wet processing conditions must be cleaned and sanitized as necessary to preclude allergen cross-contact and cross-contamination. Some more references I want to share with you. Food contact surfaces, equipment, and or utensils. 11740A1, 11740A2, 11740A3 talk about these items. You got to make sure they're designed and made from materials that are adequately cleanable and maintained to preclude cross contact and cross contamination. Your equipment and utensils must be designed and constructed and used to avoid adulteration from food, from all contaminants, as well as installed to facilitate cleaning and maintenance. Carrying on, my utensils must be corrosion resistant, made of non-toxic materials, and capable of withstanding, normal use under normal conditions. And cleaning must be maintained to protect against what? There it is again, cross contact and cross contamination. Must have smoothly bonded seams as to prevent, again, cross contact or cross contamination. So we're looking at the condition. We're looking at the capability of it to be clean as well. And one more here to take a look at. 11780C1 states equipment shall be capable of being taken apart for thorough cleaning when necessary. So what is the goal anyway? Well, the goal is that we should monitor at a frequency sufficient enough to have some level of assurance that our food contact surfaces, including gloves and outer garments, that they're properly maintained, that they're designed and constructed in a way that we can clean them and sanitize them, and that they are cleaned and sanitized on a routine basis. So let's go through these things again here. So we're going to monitor. So what are we monitoring? Well, we're monitoring the condition of the food contact surfaces. We're also going to monitor the cleanliness and the sanitation of these food contact surfaces. So that's probably going to need to take a look at different types of sanitizers and how to properly use them, what kind of concentration we're going to need, and then about the gloves and outer garments, which might come in contact with food. Are they in good condition? Are they cleanable? Are they reusable, these gloves, these garments? So the monitoring might just be a visual inspection, just taking a look. Is the surface in good condition? Does it look clean? Are the gloves or the garments in good repair? Are they capable of being cleaned? We may need to do some type of testing, some type of chemical tests, like using some type of test strip or other test kit to check the levels of concentration of the sanitizers we're using to ensure that the cleanliness is being properly managed. And then we may even employ something like some specific microbial test or ATP type testing. So during monitoring, we may find an area where we need to correct something. So let's say that we observe that the sanitizer concentration from the dispenser varies from day to day. Well, what should we do? Well, in some cases, we might be able to repair that, or in some cases, it might be necessary to replace this proportioning equipment and make sure that to train the crew to make sure that they're properly using and make sure that they're taking a look at these things from time to time. So let's say that we have a couple tables butted up against each other, and these where they meet, there's food and soil and debris trapping there. So what should we do? Well, in that case, probably be a good idea to separate those tables and make sure there's access to clean the ends of the table, and so the debris won't uh, accumulate there at that area. Let's take a look at another thing. The table work surface shows signs of corrosion. Well, it's possible that the table could be refinished. More than likely, might be a good time to replace the damaged equipment. And maybe take a look at our cleaning compounds and see if they're the cause of the corrosion of the table. So again, when monitoring, we may find areas where we need corrections. We're going to want to make sure we do those. So in general, you're going to want to make sure that your food contact surfaces are made of safe materials. And they're fabricated in a manner where they have smooth edges and seams and corners for easy cleaning and sanitizing. So again, be mindful that the material is non-toxic and doesn't leach, or non-absorbent and corrosion resistant. We're going to be looking at again the condition and cleanliness of a food contact surface. These things will be important. So what kind of materials should we avoid in the food preparation, food processing world? Wood would be one that's pretty much banned. It's porous, it's therefore microbial concerns. Ferrous metals, corrosion quite frequently happens. Brass, so variable, depending on the quality of the brass, corrosion is a big factor. Galvanized metal, again, corrosion. And then we also have this leaching effect. Zinc then leaks from the metal into the food if we're using acidic products. So and a lot of times many of these are banned. Certain regulations would ban these. So in general, we'll talk about our clothing, our aprons, our gloves, our garments that we may wear in facilities and production and processing of food. We want to make sure that we store the clean gloves and clothing in an area where they're not exposed to splash or dust or other contaminants. And then when we have dirty garments, we want to make sure we store the dirty garments in an area where they're not exposed to the clean garments. So therefore preventing cross-contamination, cross-contact with regard to that. So storing our clothing and gloves. So in general, our equipment needs to drain appropriately if it applies to that. So it won't entrap liquids, food, soil. Uh, Also needs to be easily accessible for cleaning and maintenance and inspection equipment. And it needs to be able to withstand the type of use it's undergoing. We need to make sure that we're training our staff on the conditions that we should be using equipment, the standards laid out by the manufacturer ideally. So we're talking condition and cleanliness, so I think we better talk about cleaning. How do you clean? Well, there's basically a 5-step process to it. First, you want to remove the globules, a dry cleaning in essence, scraping, removing things. Then there'd be an element of pre-rinsing, right? Again, still removing soils as much as possible there. And here we get into the application of the detergent, soap, right? So in here we're going to get into probably some scrubbing action, some type of brush, perhaps some other type of equipment, perhaps to apply the detergent. After the detergent has been appropriately applied, we're going to get into a rinsing to remove the soil, remove the soap, and then we're going to move into the sanitizing phase. So there are different types of cleaners, and you probably want to work with a detergent supplier or a cleaning supply house to find the appropriate type of detergent for the type of application for what we're up against, what type of equipment, what type of food. So we've got these general purpose type cleaning. We've got these detergents with high alkaline pH elevated. Um, we've got chlorinated type detergents, acid-based, enzyme-based detergents. So again, work with the detergent distributor. Make sure you have the appropriate type of detergents, cleaning compounds for your facility. Make sure you're following the label. The label's going to be important to follow the instructions on the label when using these detergents to proper concentration, proper contact time, being mindful even the temperature at mixing or using these detergents. And then think about sometimes we'll need to actually get in there and use a little scrubbing or a little elbow grease, right? And then the makeup of the water, right? The makeup of the water that we're using with these detergents can sometimes affect how effective the detergent is. So we're going to want to know things like pH of the water, the mineral buildup of the type of water is going to be important. So you want to make sure during the cleaning process you're appropriately applying the detergents. So there's different methods for that. You've got these various soak tanks or these foam distribution equipment guns. You have equipment that they stay in the place, and you have to then appropriately clean and lubricate and the equipment and the parts in place, which may mean we need to take some buckets, some pails with some soap and sanitizer to the location. Sometimes they have built-in cleaning systems in the equipment as well. So when it comes down to heavy soil and removing or where we need a little elbow grease, so we're going to want to make sure that the brushes we use have the bristles with the proper stiffness, that the pads that we're using actually break down the soil that we're trying to remove. Pressure, be careful with pressure because you start spraying things everywhere, especially with water, wet pressure. So be mindful of that. Maybe some not too high pressure, but a moderate type pressure would be a good application. So when we bring in these brushes and pads and brooms and these equipment, you should really think about color coding these for designated tasks so that we don't cross-contaminate or cross-contact throughout the facility. So perhaps each room will have its own type of equipment or each product will have its own equipment. So think about having designated equipment or color coding your equipment. Sponges, towels, mops, those are typically banned and should not be used for routine cleaning because they retain moisture. Moisture then is a characteristic that microbial bacteria needs to grow. So we find ourselves in a place where we have contaminated towels, sponges, mops, spreading organisms throughout the facility. So we pretty much should ban those. Limited application for those type of things. So when we're using our sanitizing agents, we want to make sure that, of course, if we have these inline proportioner applicators, they're accurate, they're managed. Or maybe we have hand or foot bath sanitizers, we're managing those proper concentrations. We may have other type of sprayers or dips that we're using or foamers that we're using. Let's make sure we're managing those to the manufacturer's recommendation. And of course, always being mindful of concentrations. If it's not strong enough, it's not going to be effective. If it's too strong, we have a chemical hazard. So let's be mindful of these mixing and these application equipment we're using. 21 CFR 178 1010 covers different type of sanitizers and where we can use them and the appropriate concentrations. So you want to be mindful, is it a food contact surface? They got a certain concentration, non-food contact surface concentrations, and then a sanitizer, it possibly is being used in the water in a facility. So we want to make sure that we understand the levels within water too. So it's good information here. I'll leave it up for a second, but again, this is 21 CFR 178 1010. So perhaps from time to time, depending on the type of facility and products you're working with, you want to confirm the effectiveness of your sanitization using contact plates or swabs, looking for specific confirmation of the effectiveness of your cleaning and sanitizing. So you got a lot of work to do. Sanitation element number 2, condition and cleanliness of food contact surfaces. So this training will help again cover 120.6A2 for juice processors and 123.11B2 for fish and fishery product processors. Condition and cleanliness. You got to monitor it. You got to correct it. Got to make sure these areas are compliant with 21 CFR 117 subpart B as well. We covered that. So this concludes the training on the condition and cleanliness of food contact surfaces. Make sure you complete the quiz and review any attachments. Thanks for choosing 123 Food Handler for your training.